Hello friends, welcome to the class on Evolution of Management. In this class, an attempt is made to explain the evolution and early history of management, as well as the efforts of some well-known contributors in the growth and development of the subject during this period. Management has a history as old as human being. Whenever human beings began to live together, whenever they started to conquer the earth with group efforts, they might have used some kind of management techniques. Management, in some form or other, is an integral part of human living and is essential wherever human efforts are undertaken to achieve common goals. Thus, we can definitely believe that the concept of management is as old as the human race itself. However, the study of management in a systematic way and as a distinct body of knowledge is originated only recently. When we examine the general history, we can see some well-developed civilizations. We have studied in history classes that there were many developed civilizations in ancient world. How can we say that there was nobody to manage these matters? It is very difficult to believe that there was nobody to manage such things. History says that the kings ruled their kingdom with management and leadership skills. They conquered other countries with planned efforts. What does this mean? This means that there was some kind of management practices during that period. We have also studied that the Egyptians constructed pyramids in around 5000 BC. The historians say that the construction of pyramids accomplished with the efforts of as many as 1 lakh people for over 20 years. How can we say that there had been no planning behind it? How can we say that there had been no supervision and direction over the workers? We cannot say that there was no management at that time. It is a fact that some kind of management was there. But at that time, there was no formal study on management as we have today. There was no special management school. There was no formal management thought. There was no accepted principle. All these formal ideas, thoughts, principles, etc. have developed recently. To be more specific, the present form of management thoughts has been originated only about 150 years ago. The studies on the history of management reveals that the management thoughts have been started during the last quarter of 19th century. As far as we people, the present managed students are concerned, our study on the history of management is limited to these 150 years, starting from the last quarter of 19th century. When we talk about evolution of management, we consider only the formal thoughts and growth of management took place during this time. However, in this class, we can discuss some earlier thoughts and contributions also. We can study the evolution and history of management by dividing the entire period under 4 heads. They are termed as pre-classical, classical, neoclassical and modern management periods. We can begin with the pre-classical period. You can see here these various stages of evolution of management and the period around which it began. It is very difficult to give the exact time or period for each stage, as it is not started with a specific event or by a specific person. However, the time period shows the general considerations and opinions. We can start from pre-classical period. It is also called pre-scientific management period. The period before 1880 is considered as pre-classical period of management. Pre-classical period is the period which is prior to the period of formal management thoughts. It is believed that the formal management thoughts were started by F.W. Taylor in the year 1880. His thoughts are called scientific management. Thus, the period prior to 1880 is the pre-classical period in the history of management. The pre-classical period can also be called as pre-scientific management period. The pre-classical period is the longest period in the history of management. It has a long history to reveal right from the human evolution itself. The ancient civilizations, construction of pyramids, ancient Greek and Roman empires, European supremacy, Arabian trade, etc., etc., are part of this pre-classical period. Even though we can see the effect of management in those things, the discipline called management had not originated at that time. However, thoughts of some well-known persons lived during that period are worth mentioning, because their thoughts had influenced management in its growth afterwards. One of these great personalities is Robert Owen, and the other include Charles Babbage, Adam Smith, and some other personalities. At first, we can see the role of Robert Owen. Robert Owen was a British industrialist. He was the first to speak out on behalf of the organization's human resources. He was a textile manufacturer, a philanthropist, and a social reformer. Owen, born in the year 1771 and died at the age of 87 in the year 1858. He is well known for his efforts to improve factory working conditions for his workers. You may know Owen as the founder of cooperative movement. He carried out experiments and introduced many social reforms. Cooperative movement was one among them. He believed that workers' performance would be influenced by the total environment in which they worked. Therefore, he improved the working environment of his own factories and took efforts to improve the relationships between employees and employers. He did all this not as an expert in management, but as a philanthropist. He believed that better working environment would increase satisfaction and productivity of workers. Owen worked for building up of a spirit of cooperation between the workers and managers. He introduced new ideas of human relations to improve harmonious working environment in his own factories. For example, he implemented shorter working hours and housing facilities for his employees. He arranged education facilities for the children of his workers. He provided canteen facilities, made arrangements to provide training to his workers, especially in hygiene matters. He made all these because he believed that better working conditions and smooth employer-employee relations would result in better output. He even criticized the other industrialists for not spending anything to improve the working conditions in their factories. However, Owen is not considered as a management expert because at that time even the subject management was not emerged. But it is a fact that his ideas and efforts paved ways for developing better management strategies later. The next important personality to be remembered is Charles Babbage. He lived in between 1792 and 1871. Charles Babbage was a professor of mathematics at Cambridge University. More than a mathematician, he was a philosopher, inventor, and a mechanical engineer. Babbage originated the concept of a digital programmable computer. You may better know him as father of computers. As a mathematician, he believed that mathematics has a lot to do to improve efficiency and productivity of workers in factory. He was a proponent of the specialization of labor and believed that the efficiency of laborers can be improved through specialization. When we talk about specialization, we cannot discard the contributions of Adam Smith, the father of economics. Adam Smith lived during 1723 and 1790. Charles Babbage was born in 1792, 2 years after the death of Adam Smith. Adam Smith had written about specialization at that time in the year 1776. Adam Smith, in his writing, particularly in his book titled The Wealth of Nations, had described about division of work and time and motion studies. In that book, he had even urged employers that they should implement division of work in their organizations. In the writings of ancient Greek philosopher Plato, we can see about specialization strategy. His teacher Socrates had discussed about management issues. You should understand that Plato, the Greek philosopher, had lived during BC 428 to 347 period. Socrates lived during BC 469 to 399 period. At that time, these visionaries had mentioned specialization for efficiency. Like Plato and Adam Smith, Babbage also advocated specialization. As a mathematician, Babbage applied mathematics to the efficient use of materials and production facilities. He advocated that the managers should conduct time studies of data to establish work standards for anticipated work performance levels. Charles Babbage was the first person who suggested to reward the workers with a bonus to the extent by which they exceed their standards. We can see that many of these thoughts and suggestions were later became part of management strategies. We know that when Taylor introduced scientific management, many of these ideas such as specialization, bonus scheme, time and motion studies, etc. were included as part of it. Thus, in that sense, we can argue that the strategies of scientific management were originally started from these early philosophers and writers, including Charles Babbage. Similarly, the application of quantitative techniques in managerial decision making is also considered as a major contribution of Babbage. Charles Babbage is known as the patron saint of operation research and management science. It is to be noted that operation research and management science were adopted as management strategies during 1950s only. Babbage wrote about this some 100 years before. Babbage was really a remarkable contributor to the management discipline. Still, it is to be remembered that all these people were part of pre-scientific or pre-classical management period. The management developed as a formal discipline years after the death of these expert contributors. Now we can move to the next period, the classical management period. The period from 1880 to 1930 can be considered as classical management period. It is in this classical period that the management was born formally as a field of study. Many theories on management were developed during this classical period. The management philosophies, theories and principles developed during this period are together called classical theories on management. And these have been included under classical school of management thought. The classical period is very much crucial not only for the management but for the industrial development also, because The classical management period was the period of industrial revolution also. Because of this, to know more about classical theories, it is better to have an idea about industrial revolution. Do you know about industrial revolution? Industrial revolution is the transformation process of production and manufacturing from manual and labor oriented methods to mechanized and factory oriented methods. It was the industrial revolution which changed the countries from an agrarian and handicraft economy to the one dominated by industry and machine manufacturing. It means that prior to industrial revolution, most of the workforce was employed in agriculture, either as self-employed farmers, as landowners or tenants, or as landless agricultural laborers. The industrial revolution changed the scenario to mechanized and industry-oriented economy. The industrial revolution began in the late 1770s. It is believed that the first industrial revolution was started in Britain and continued till the end of first quarter of 19th century. After 2 or 3 decades, the second industrial revolution started during the mid 19th century and it lasted until early 20th century. The first European countries to be industrialized after Britain were Belgium, France and Germany. Its effect spread over to America and Japan in addition to the continent of Europe. However, the effect of industrial revolution was specifically visible in America and Europe. It was during this second industrial revolution the classical management thoughts were aroused. We can see how it took place. As earlier mentioned, the industrial revolution was a period of major industrialization and innovation. When the industrial revolution took place, the human workforce was mostly replaced by machines and factories. Transportation, communication, banking, etc. became more advanced. When the factories increased in number and complexity, the demand for managers were also increased. The number of people employed as managers grew tremendously. Along with the number of industries, the problems and complexities of industries also increased. There was a huge demand for expert managers who can find a solution to problems encountered in the workplace. At that time, the study of management became more systematized and formal, and various approaches or so-called schools of management thoughts began to develop in various parts of the world. As already mentioned, classical management theory was initiated in the year 1880 during the time of industrial revolution. At that time, the industries were competing with each other in maximizing productivity and profitability. Every industry was trying to find ways to make use of machines and men and tried new methods to increase their output. The managers were eagerly searching for new techniques to improve their productivity and to increase quality of the products along with a reduced cost of production. The managers were thinking about ways to manage workers and organizations more efficiently. 3 major management philosophies were developed during this period. These are scientific management, administrative management, and bureaucratic management. The interesting fact is that these 3 theories or philosophies were developed in 3 different parts of the world. The scientific management was emerged in America. The administrative management started in France. And the bureaucratic management was formed in Germany. All these theories were emerged in entirely different areas of the world, almost in the same period. We can have a quick look at these 3 classical theories. At first, the scientific management. It can be defined as the systematic study of work and various methods to do it in order to improve efficiency. Maximization of output at minimum effort and cost was the main objective of this philosophy. Frederick Winslow Taylor was its main proponent. Other major contributors were Frank Gilbert, Lillian Gilbert, and Henry Gant. Scientific management has some principles. Firstly, it calls for the application of the scientific methods instead of all traditional and less effective methods. Second principle of scientific management suggested that the workers should be selected scientifically based on their qualification and should be given proper training to perform their job efficiently. Third principle urged for genuine cooperation between workers and management. Finally, it suggested that management should take complete responsibility for planning the work, and workers should take responsibility to implement these plans. These were the principles put forward by the scientific management for improving productivity. In addition to these principles, scientific management also suggested some other strategies like standardization, differential piece rate systems, bonus plans, etc. for improving the efficiency of workers. Scientific management had a tremendous influence on management practice in the early 20th century. Many of the views of scientific management are still valid. As already mentioned, the scientific school of thought owes its roots to several major contributors, including F.W. Taylor, Henry Gant, and Frank and Lillian Gilbert. We cannot discard the contributions of Charles Babbage also. Frederick Winslow Taylor, called the father of scientific management. Henry Gant was an associate of Taylor. He developed the famous Gantt chart. Gantt chart is a bar graph that measures planned and completed work along with each stage of production, and this is widely used as a planning and control tool since its development in 1910. Frank and Lillian Gilbert were husband and wife team who conducted motion studies. Frank Gilbert was interested in standardization and method study also. He was basically a construction contractor. He gave up his contracting career in 1912 to study scientific management after hearing Taylor's speak at a professional meeting. It is believed that Frank Gilbert was the first person who conducted motion studies to find out the best possible method of performing a given job. His wife Lillian was a psychologist. She studied work arrangements to eliminate wasteful hand-body motions. Lillian is known as the first lady of management. This team identified and classified 17 basic hand motions used by workers to complete a particular job. They could precisely analyze the exact elements of workers' hand movements. They tried to identify the one best way to perform a task in the most comfortable and time-efficient manner. Later, they could find out the types and frequencies of motions and how it causes in the creation of fatigue among workers. This is how they identified unnecessary motions which waste the workers' energy. They proved that by eliminating inappropriate motions and also focusing on appropriate motions, the work fatigue can be minimized and workers' performance can be improved. It is better to watch the class on scientific management for better awareness on the topic. These all are about scientific management. We can move to the next. The second management philosophy under classical management is administrative management. This was formulated by Henry Fayol. Henry Fayol was a French mining engineer and a management practitioner. He was born in 1841 and died in 1925. When Taylor was proceeding with the scientific management practices in America, Fayol was formulating principles for general management in France. Henry Fayol is known as father of general management. The management philosophy developed by Fayol is often called general management or administrative management. Administrative management focuses on the management process and principles of management. Unlike scientific management, administrative management provides a more general theory of management. Henry Fayol presented 14 principles for management, which included the division of work, authority and responsibility, discipline, unity of command, unity of direction, subordination of individual interest to general interest, remuneration to personnel, centralization, scalar chain, order, equity, stability of tenure of personnel, initiative and team spirit. These principles provide general guidelines to modern day managers on how a supervisor should organize the department and manage the staff. These principles are still widely used in management theories. According to Fayol, all managerial tasks can be classified under 6 groups such as technical, commercial, financial, security, accounting and managerial. Out of this, the technical tasks are related to production. The commercial tasks include buying, selling and exchange. The financial activities include search for capital and its optimum use. Security denotes protection for property and person. Accounting is the activities relating to recording and taking stock of materials, its cost, profit, liabilities, keeping balance sheet, making statistical analysis, etc., etc. The final task is managerial. It consists of planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating and controlling. He pointed out that these activities exist in every organization. Okay, now we can move to the third management philosophy under classical period. It is bureaucratic management. Bureaucratic management focuses on the ideal form of an organization. It describes the nature and structure of an ideal organization. Max Weber was the major contributor to bureaucratic management. He was a German sociologist. He developed a theory of authority structures and described organizational activities on the basis of authority relations. Based on his observation, many early organizations were inefficiently managed with decisions based on personal relationships and loyalty. At that time, the business organizations were performed on the interests of the owner or proprietor. He was the main investor. He decided the policies, he took all decisions, he decided everything. Thus, the olden business was similar to one-man show. Max Weber described that an ideal type of organization must be characterized by division of labor, clearly defined hierarchy, detailed rules and regulations, selection and promotion of employees based on ability, etc. It should never be a one-man show. It should never be on the shoulders of a single authority. Weber undoubtedly insisted that an ideal organization should have impersonal relationships. Impersonal relationships are not based on personal likes and dislikes. It should be based on the positions and duties. In an organization, everybody must have certain duties and responsibilities. There is no place for personal relations, likes, dislikes, etc. He called this state of organization as bureaucracy. Thus, his ideal organization was called bureaucratic organization. Weber insisted that managers' authority in an organization should be based not on tradition or charisma, but on the position held by managers in the organizational hierarchy. Weber characterized a bureaucratic organization as an ideal type of organization. According to him, the organization should never function on the basis of personality or charisma of the manager. The organization may have charismatic and powerful managers as well as average skilled managers. The functioning of the organization need not depend on the power or charisma of leaders, but it should be based on the well-defined position in the organization structure. There must be proper line of authority with clearly defined duties and responsibilities. The position of a person is more important than his personality. Thus, the person in the position of manager can function effectively irrespective of his charisma and personality. Thus, any organization can function even if one or two managers are not skilled or charismatic. The organizations based on this position-based management is called bureaucratic organization. According to Weber, a bureaucratic organization must have some essential features. In a bureaucratic organization, labor is to be divided with a clear indication of authority and responsibility. There must be the principle of hierarchy in the organization. The selection and promotion of personnel must be on the basis of qualifications. There must be clear written rules. It should be made applicable to all impersonally and uniformly. Technical competency must be the basis of promotion. Weber believed that where all these conditions are strictly followed, such an organization would grow and develop even without charismatic leadership. Now, the term bureaucracy is often associated with mindless rules and red tape. It is often criticized as the role of employees. However, Weber's concept of the ideal bureaucratic organization was extremely powerful. Bureaucracies work well under many conditions, especially in stable organizations and in stable environments. Okay, so far we could understand the nature and features of three important theories under classical management. The classical period ended at around 1930. However, these theories are still discussed widely among the experts and practitioners of management. We can see what happened to these classical theories after 1930. After Fayol, Luther Gulick expanded the works of Henry Fayol with a view to build a foundation for the management theory. Like Henry Fayol, he also believed that management functions are universal. Luther Gulick was an American political scientist. He, along with a British management consultant named Lyndall Erwick, elaborated Henry Fayol's management ideas in their management paper titled Notes on Theory of Organizations. They published this paper in 1937. They suggested 7 functions for management and presented it in the form of an acronym, POSDCORB, which stands for planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting and budgeting. This acronym and functions are widely used in management practices and studies. Even though Gulick was a strong supporter of Fayol, he agreed with some ideas of Taylor also. You might have heard the term span of control. It was Gulick who added the concept of span of control, which explains the factors which limit the number of people a manager could supervise effectively. Lyndall F. Erwick, the teammate of Gulick, was a long-lived man who died in 1983 at the age of 102. he is recognized for integrating the idea of Henry Fayol into a comprehensive theory of management administration. He published a list of 10 principles for improving managerial effectiveness in the book titled The Elements of Administration, published in 1943. Lyndall Erwick tried to synthesize and consolidate the previous writings on management, especially about the structure of organizations and functions of executives. As a part of it, Gerlich and Erwick team redefined the management principle unity of command given by Henry Fayol. They distinguished the functions of line and staff organizations and introduced a new method to apply the principle of unity of command under this situation. Similar to Gerlich and Erwick team, another two persons called James D. Moone and Alan C. Reilly associated together to develop some organizational theories. James Moone was an executive at General Motors and Alan C. Reilly was a historian. They wrote a book titled Onward Industry in 1931 and later revised and renamed it as Principles of Organization. In that book, they questioned the argument that an efficient organization should be based on certain formal principles and premises. According to them, the organization required only one basic principle. They called it as coordination principle. They defined coordination as the orderly arrangement of work group efforts that provides unity of action in pursuit of common goals. They opined that the coordination is the main function of manager. Along with coordination, the managers should ensure two other things also. These can be considered as additional principles. They are scalar principle and functional principle. Scalar principle is almost similar to the principle of Henry Fayol. It described the grading of duties in accordance with the amount of authority possessed at different organizational levels. Functional principle is about the differences in the duties of different levels. In short, different duties are performed at different levels of the organization. The manager needs to coordinate these works in order to ensure that these works are directed to attain the common goal of the organization. These are all about the classical theories of management. When we analyze these, we can understand that all these theories emphasized consistency, efficiency, and clear rules for productivity and profitability. When we examine these theories, we can realize that these all neglected the needs of the workers. Classical theories explained the methods to increase efficiency of the organization, and their scope was limited to the internal affairs of the organization. Such theories failed to connect the organization with its environment outside the factory. The greatest criticism of these early schools is that they place undue emphasis on the formal aspects of organization and neglected entirely the effects of individual personalities, informal groups, intra-organizational conflicts, and the decision-making process, etc. Criticizers argued that these theories are suitable only for uncomplicated and relatively stable organizations and not helpful to solve more complex problems. However, these theories provided a way to organize and manage large organizations in an efficient way. Okay, with this we can stop this class. We can continue the discussion on the evolution of management in the next class. Thank you.